Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. Your hosts today are Scott Barker and Jesse Mayshark, the founders of CompassKnox.com. You can find their daily in-depth coverage and subscribe at CompassKnox.com. The Compass Point podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Almost an Agreement. Almost an Agreement is a layman's attempt to get a handle on the workings in government and politics that we deal with every day. Check them out at almostanagreement.com or subscribe for free on your favorite podcast provider. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And now, here are your hosts, Scott and Jesse from CompassKnox.com.
Welcome back once again to the Compass Points podcast, the weekly podcast about Knoxville news and events brought to you by the fine folks at Compass, which is at CompassKnox.com. And the fine folks that we're talking about are me, Jesse Mayshark, and my friend, co-publisher, and colleague, Scott Barker. How are you doing, Scott?
Doing great, Jesse. Got any big plans for the 4th?
I do not have any plans at all for the 4th. I think we're probably just going to stay close to the house and enjoy the relentless mayhem that is the whole week around the 4th of July in North Knoxville, as you know.
Yes. I'm gonna listen to the fireworks. Actually, they've already started in my part of North Knoxville. So, and we're taping this on Friday, so I think they started on Wednesday in my section of the neighborhood. But
I actually heard a couple fire up on Juneteenth weekend.
Yeah,
there were some fireworks then. It was kind of like people starting to get warmed up for the 4th.
Our neighbors in North Knoxville do not need much of an excuse to set off fireworks.
And we should say that if you live inside the city, it is illegal. You're not supposed to set off fireworks in the city. And I know a lot of people get very upset about this because of their pets or other reasons, people with PTSD. I understand it can be kind of traumatic for people. I also think it's kind of hard for the police to do a whole lot about this. Even if you call and report it, the likelihood that they're going to find the person who shot the firework that you saw or heard seems pretty remote to me.
Now, in fact, at Tuesday's city council meeting, Mayor Kincannon got Chief Sharp to announce that indeed it is illegal to set off fireworks without a permit. Now, you can't get a permit, so if I doubt very seriously many will.
And of course, the safe and proper thing to do is to go to World's Fair Park on Monday, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about upcoming 4th celebrations a little later in the show. What we're going to do in the front end here is our week in review. We are going to be talking about some new developments in the urban wilderness, and that will be also the feature of our interview this week. Talk a little bit about sitting down with County Mayor Glenn Jacobs as he is running for re-election to a second term. Talk about some proposals made at City Council this past week by Councilwoman Amelia Parker, the reaction to that and some of the fallout from it. And we're going to start off by following up on something we talked about last week on the show, which is County Commission's revisions, revamping, reform of the Meritt System Council. And I'm not going to go through the whole explanation of what the Meritt System Council is, because we did that last week. And if you missed last week's episode, you can go back and listen to it there.
Yeah, we don't have time to go back through the
whole we can really only explain that once a year at most. But the short version is it's the civil service system for sheriff's office employees. And what County Commission did this week was approve the changes that we talked about last week, which is, first of all, expanding the all-volunteer board, which currently is 3 members, to 7 members. And this is the board that hears any complaints from any sheriff's office employees who feel like they have been targeted or penalized for political reasons. So they're expanding it from 3 to 7 members, and maybe even more significantly than that, they put in a whole bunch of new restrictions on those members' political activity. They're making it very clear they really don't want anybody on that board who's involved in local politics, much less involved in sheriff's department politics, because that's often been the case in the past. That did pass on first reading, and it'll be up for second reading in the coming month. So the day after that meeting, City Council met, and what happened there, Scott?
Well, City Council was very interesting this week. Councilwoman Amelia Parker had proposed some charter amendments, basically rooted in her own experience. She proposed 8 charter amendments and wanted those to go on the ballot in November, and they had to be approved this summer if they were going to get on the ballot in the November election. She proposed 8. 2 of them had to do with breaking a tie in a city council primary, which is an exceedingly rare occurrence, but one that she experienced in 2017. She came in second in the primary for the 4th district seat.
Tied for second.
Unfortunately for her, someone else, Harry Tyndall, came in second as well, the exact same number of votes. And council basically had to vote on which one would go on. That's how tie votes are resolved. There is an option for a special election, but there's no time between the primary and the general for a special election. So it was a vote of council members. Council voted 9-0 to move Tyndall on to the general election. Now Parker went ahead and did another thing that's very unusual, is she qualified as an official write-in candidate, which you have to do. Santa Claus, even if he gets a majority of the votes, does not get elected in the city. And she actually got 20% of the vote in the general election. She did very well.
For a write-in candidate, that was a strong showing.
Oh, absolutely. Anyway,
then of course she went on to win.
She won 2 years later.
2019.
Running in an at-large seat, but she wanted to change that so that that the top 2 vote numbers, no matter how many candidates got those 2 top numbers, would go on, and which would have meant she would have gone on in the primary in 2017. One of the both of those failed. One of the reasons that the council rejected these were that they just didn't have enough time to consider everything. When charter amendments are made historically, there's been a very long process. You were on in city administration under Mayor O'Hara when the pension changes were put on the charter, and there was an extensive public process.
Lots of public meetings, lots of public discussion.
Yeah, and so that wouldn't have been the case this time. And that's kind of ironic, because the other set of amendments, there were 6 of them, would have been to give more time for the budget process. One of Parker's frustrations has been there's not enough time between the time that the budget is announced and the time that they are required to finalize the budget. There's not enough time to really dig in and propose changes, meaningful changes to the budget, and things like that. So she wanted to take away the deadline, which is June 15th. The fiscal year ends on June 30th. So that would give 2 extra weeks for council to deliberate, and also kind of free things up at the front end as well. Won't go into all the details of these because none of them passed. But it was kind of interesting that she wanted more time for the budget things, and her council colleagues wanted more time for discussion of those changes, which would have put it off another 2 years. As it stands now, these can come back up in any kind of form. Council can do it. Private citizens can petition for it as well, but it wouldn't be on the ballot till 2024.
Right.
So, So that happened. There was a lot of discussion about it, but ultimately those all failed. But then there was some interesting fallout the next day. One of the only citizen who addressed council during that debate on Tuesday night, very early Wednesday morning, wrote a very long, rambling email to Councilwoman Parker. It's R. Bentley Marlowe is his name. He renovates and restores houses in Mechanicsville.
A developer in Mechanicsville who has fixed up a bunch of houses there.
Yes, and he's very interested in city politics. And one of the things he mentioned to Councilwoman Parker in this email is that he was considering running against her if another candidate didn't. Anyway, so he sends this long email, and basically it's to condense it down. He kind of agreed with a lot of her positions, but didn't like the way that she went about doing things. And then Councilwoman Parker wrote back. One of the things that she included in the email was an accusation that the election administrator, Chris Davis, had lied to her about.
And we should say on this email, she copied a bunch of people, right?
Oh yeah, you stole my thunder. I was going to build up to that. But anyway, she essentially called Chris Davis, the election administrator, a liar, and she also called her council colleagues spineless, which council members generally are pretty. They follow some decorum. They don't make personal accusations.
They're usually pretty polite to each other in public.
They're in public at least. Now, what Councilwoman Parker did though was she not only accused her council colleagues of being spineless, but she copied them on the email.
She wanted them to see it.
She apparently wanted them to see it. Although we'll get to her response in a moment. Kind of caused a stir that it started circulating around when Chris Davis and I talked.
Chris Davis, the election
administrator, he was absolutely livid that the integrity of his office had come into question, and he was. You can read his response to our story, but the council members.
Chris Davis basically said that Councilwoman Parker had contacted him about how to do this, and he provided her the information, and then kind of never heard anything else, and that was the end of it. And then she came out and said that she had been misled by them.
Yeah, and in fact, Chris Davis said that she didn't even tell him why she needed the information. It was just kind of like, what's the required, what's the time limit to get anything on the ballot? And he told her 75 days, and she said that was a lie. So anyway, her council colleagues were kind of measured in their public response. As we mentioned, council is pretty much polite to one another, and they were, for the most part, in public at least, basically saying, we don't need this to.
They weren't happy about it. I think it's safe to say.
Well, they were not happy about it, and it kind of goes. One of the things that is Parker is typically not every vote, obviously, but she is typically an opponent of or very much a critic of the mayor. She votes against many of the mayor's proposals that the other council members vote for. There are a lot of 8-to-1 votes on council, and she is the one. They're one of the interesting things when I called her to ask her, as I talked to her council members, I talked to Chris Davis, and so I called her to ask her about that and if she thought that would hinder her effectiveness any at all. She responded that she didn't think it was a story. I'm going to really kind of condense this as well, that it wasn't a story, and that tried to argue that it was a private email that she actually said she didn't forward to the other, or copy the other council members, although the copy I saw certainly indicated that she had. One thing that needs to be interjected here is there's no such thing as a private email from a council member on official business. Everything,
it's all public
it's
record.
all public record. Even if you don't copy all of your colleagues on it, it's still a public record. And if we wanted to, and we have no intention of doing, we could make a public records request for every email that she sent as a council member. So we're not going to do that. Don't worry.
Well, we might.
We could.
We're not promising that.
We're not promising we will, but we have no intention of doing so.
Yeah. We try to request public records when we think there is a good reason to do it. We mostly don't go on just sort of wide-scale fishing expeditions. Yeah,
and but anyway, the upshot then, of course, was it that we signed off the conversation with Councilwoman Parker accusing us of being biased and against her, and which that's kind of comes with the territory. We've been anytime you write a story that a public official thinks puts them in an unflattering light, you can get those kinds of comments.
Yeah, I should say, and this is maybe a bit of a public service announcement for public officials or people who are thinking about running for public office. If you ever find yourself tempted to try to tell a reporter whether something is a story or not, I would be cautious, because that's one of those things that usually makes us think, well, I think I'm onto something
Yeah,
here.
I must be onto something.
And the other thing is, of course, like, that's our determination to make. We're the ones who decide whether it's a story or not. But then the other part of that is insulting the media. How many times have you been insulted by a public official, Scott, in your professional capacity?
I do not have the math skills.
Right, a lot. We've heard this. We understand that it is part of what comes with our job.
Oh, a funny thing about you talked about trying to tell media what the story. Usually, you said what it wasn't. I actually had someone the other day also try to tell me what the story was, and that was University of Tennessee President Randy Boyd. When I was covering the summer meetings, we were chatting before the Board of Trustees meeting, and he said, "I'm going to tell you what your headline is, and it's that there's not going to be a tuition increase." And I looked at Randy and I said, the President Boyd, it doesn't work that way.
Plus, also, we had already reported that.
We'd already reported it wasn't actually news, but but that's not the way it works. And we decide what we're going to write about. And it was funny, during his presentation to the board, he actually recounted that conversation and when he was talking about what a great deal it was that there was no tuition increase. So. Anyway.
Well, and I think an interesting thing here, you talked about that Councilwoman Parker has been on sort of the losing end of a lot of lopsided votes. But I think even beyond that, this goes to something that is underappreciated about legislative bodies, especially our local legislative bodies, which are pretty small, 9 members each on school board and city council and 11 members on county commission. Those are small enough that the personal dynamics on those boards really matter. They matter a lot, even or in spite of, say, political affiliations. It's not just a partisan thing. It is of course, there are not very many Democrats on county commission, for example. But, the sort of personal conflicts that you see sometimes on these boards are often not necessarily because of ideological reasons. A lot of it is whether people get along with each other, whether they like each other, and how much work any individual member does to build relationships and build alliances with other people on the body, so that when they have something big, what's your big ask that you're going to come to your colleagues and say, hey, here's something that's maybe kind of complicated and difficult, but I think we should do. People are much more likely to support you if you've kind of developed those relationships. And I think that in this case, what you see with Councilwoman Parker is that those relationships haven't been there. I'm sure she would have her own explanations for why that is. But I think both the vote and then her reaction to it kind of showed that is lacking there.
Yeah, I think that there is a disconnect between her and the majority of the other council members, and you're right. It is, these personal relationships are very important, not only among members of the body, but also at least in the city's case with the administration, because we have a strong mayor form of government. The whether you like it or not, whether you support the mayor or not, or what, you've got to deal with the mayor in just about everything that you do. And so finding, a way to build relationships and make some common ground with members of the administration as well as other members of council is vitally important if you want to get anything done that's outside of the ordinary.
Right. All right. Well, moving on, we had an article this past week. It was kind of we're doing lots of election coverage right now of the August 4th race. So we're kind of going race by race for the contested offices. And so we had our story on the county mayor's race with an interview with the Democratic candidate, Debbie Housley, and then with Mayor Glenn Jacobs, the incumbent. And I found this interesting because it was my first opportunity to sit down with, I've interviewed Glenn Jacobs dozens of times over the past 4 years about one specific issue or another. But this was a chance to kind of talk to him about his whole term and what he sees as his accomplishments and what he's planning for the second term. And, the thing that struck me the most about it, I think, was that he feels pretty confident and sure of himself in the decisions he's made so far, and that the kind of path that he set is one that's going to be embraced and give him a second term. And especially, I asked him what he thought his biggest achievements were, and one was not raising taxes, which was, I expected him to say that. He ran for office saying he wasn't going to raise taxes. Every year he has come out and not raised taxes, and so he could very legitimately say that he did the thing they said. But the other thing he cited was his role during the pandemic. And I think that was interesting because he was criticized a lot by a lot of different people. Some people on county commission, a lot of people in the community, for his kind of very consistent opposition from the beginning all the way through to whatever point we are at it now, of opposing any and all public health mandates. He's not a fan of telling people what to do, not a fan of telling people that they have to wear masks, that businesses, all of the restrictions that were in place at different points in different kinds of businesses, he opposed. And, he says this is very much in line with his kind of libertarian, pro-business, keep government out of the way philosophy, that he just didn't think it was the role of government. He thought the role of government and the health department was to tell people what was going on. Here's what we know about it, and kind of you can make your own decisions about how you want to respond to that. And this comes despite we've had 1,400 people in Knox County die. It's not a small number. And he acknowledged that. He did say that, well, mostly it was people of sort of certain demographics, mostly older people, which is true everywhere. And kind of his argument was that it didn't matter. He didn't think it mattered so much what government did about any of this, because kind of COVID was going to kill who it was going to kill regardless. Certainly people have died from COVID everywhere, regardless of what restrictions have been in place. It is worth noting that more people have died some places than others. Tennessee is one of the worst states in the country. We're the 5th highest death toll per capita under COVID. So I don't know that everybody would agree that, it doesn't matter what people do or don't do, because we do have a lot of regional differences in how many people have died, especially sort of since vaccines were available. Nevertheless, Jacobs really cited that as a strength. And he said he thought it was a strength for him because he was very consistent. He was clear about what his philosophy was. And I think he very much believes, and I don't know that there's any reason to think he's wrong, that is in line with what the majority of people in Knox County thought, and that he is going to be reelected, partly not in spite of what he did or didn't do during the pandemic, but because of it. So I thought that was interesting. Anything else jump out to you about Jacob's thoughts on his term?
No, I kind of thought those same things. One of the things that you kept mentioning was consistency, and Jacobs is one of those political figures that you almost don't have to ask him a question because you already know what you want to get him to say whatever he's going to say in his words, but you kind of already know the answer. And it's that way on taxes. It was that way. I could have, based on everything prior to the pandemic, if you'd said in December of 2019, there's going to be a pandemic that's going to hit in Knox County, and it's going to be widespread, and some people are going to die. What will your county mayor do about it? I would say he's going to say it's up to the individual to do whatever they want to do. I think that's that's one of the things. And I do think that can be a strength.
He's certainly portraying it as one.
And of course, then you've got Helsley. He's got an uphill battle, and I don't. A lot of times when you run against an incumbent, you're the anti-incumbent. I don't know that, and a lot of times that doesn't quite work. Kind of what did you get from her and her?
Yeah, I think that she is very much running to be the anti-incumbent in a lot of ways. I mean, she said that she ran because she thought Knox County can do better, and what she means by that is do better than Glenn Jacobs. And so a lot of her campaign is very much focused on Glenn Jacobs, what he has done, what he hasn't done. And then just as Jacobs himself often embraces sort of broad national issues, especially in his social media accounts where he'll weigh in on all sorts of things beyond the boundaries of Knox County, Helsley has also kind of staked out ground as the Democrat in the race, especially since the Dobbs ruling came down a couple of weeks ago. She's been very strong about supporting women's right to choose and kind of talking about how if she were elected, how she would approach that issue and so forth. So yes, I think, elections with an incumbent are almost always mostly referendums on the incumbent. That's probably the case here. And Jacobs is running as a Republican incumbent in a county that has, right up until the most recent elections, voted strongly Republican. So he would look to have a pretty big advantage. So now we're getting up toward our interview segment. And you wrote about this just on Friday. Why don't you talk about it a little bit and set us up?
Yeah, this is a little shift from politics. Really, what we decided to write about for Friday, and is an expansion of the Urban Wilderness Trail Network. The Urban Wilderness, of course, is the kind of interconnected park and greenway and trail system in South Knoxville that encompasses historic sites, nature preserves. A lot of stuff goes on private property. This is an interesting project because there's a group of 3 investors who are mountain bikers themselves, and they are opening a campground next to Marie Myers Park in South Knoxville. And it's basically going to be a place for mountain bikers to hang out. They can camp there, they can hang out there, they can be from here, they can be from out of state, whatever. That's their target demographic, and they've teamed up with the Appalachian Bike Club and the Appalachian Mountain Bike Club, because they're not for road bikes. These are mountain bikers, and to build these trails and to connect these trails with the existing system within Marie Myers Park for their state-of-the-art mountain bike trails. I've seen one of them. It's got a lot of intricate stonework, kind of a neat thing, and so they're going to build that, and the city's involved because they're getting easements. It's going to be open to the public at large. You don't have to be staying at the campground to use these trails, and the and they're going to be the city's going to hold these easements in perpetuity. So even if the campground goes away, the trails will still be there and still be accessible to the public. It's kind of an interesting story. One of the interesting things is the Appalachian Mountain Bike Club. They have been vital in the expansion and in the development of the urban wilderness. They have raised money, they have built trails, they have promoted the urban wilderness. It's kind of one of those interesting things is instead of sitting around and griping that there weren't any good places to ride your mountain bike in Knox County, they built one. And and it with benefits to others, because you can go in and hike those trails. You don't have to be a mountain biker. And you can camp in this campground, I guess. Well, you don't have to be a mountain biker to pitch a tent there. So, but anyway, it was an interesting conversation. And then the executive director of the Appalachian Mountain Bike Club is Matthew Kellogg, and he is our guest on our interview segment this week, and we talked to Matthew about this project and about all the other things that the bike club does in the urban wilderness. Our guest this week is Matthew Kellogg. Matthew's the president of the Appalachian Mountain Bike Club, and they've been very active in developing the urban wilderness in South Knoxville. And we had a story last week on an expansion of the trail network involving a business that's going to be opening down there soon called the Drop In. And we wanted to talk to Matthew about that and about the urban wilderness in general and what's going on with that corner of Knox County. Welcome, Matthew. Thanks for joining us.
Well, Scott, thanks for having me on the podcast, and thanks for you and Jesse's work on behalf of the community. So.
Thanks. It's great. One thing I wanted to start out talking about is this project with the Drop In. The Drop In is it's not open yet. They're developing it now. It's going to be essentially a unique camping experience in almost within sight of downtown Knoxville, and but it's going to be a unique camping experience at the edge of the urban wilderness. And one of the things that has happened is there's a public-private partnership to build some trails that will connect with the other trails in the urban wilderness. And so I wanted to get you to talk about that project, because the Appalachian Mountain Bike Club has been very involved in it.
Yeah, so this is sort of building upon the successes of the urban wilderness, right? Last year, the club was able to actually purchase land and give it to the city for additional trail access. This project is not necessarily a new project. We've always been partnering with other entities, whether that be IAMS or Legacy Parks or these other folks. But this is, like you mentioned, private land that they are donating private land easements or trail easements to the urban wilderness. So we're going to be able to add 4 new trails to the urban wilderness. Their property is adjacent to Marie Myers Park, a park that the club has done extensive work in over the last 3 or 4 years. It's a park that we tackled sort of a renovation to by making it all weather. So we always try to fill niches within our trail network, finding unique opportunities to capitalize upon. And this project is no different. It's like I say, adjacent to Marie Myers, and is going to continue with that language of all weather trails. And so these trails will be able to be used by folks any day of the year, regardless of the weather. They'll be able to utilize these and not be putting undue pressure on the trails, if you will. And so, it's all about the partnership that we've been able to to essentially build the trust with the drop-in, and as well just figure out the right agreement to allow these trails to continue on, whether AMBC is in the picture or whether the drop-in's in the picture. And so just a great asset to the community.
Great. One of the things that I think was interesting about this is it's not only a partnership with the drop-in and the city, but you also have partners with actually constructing the trails, because this isn't just going in and chopping away some of the undergrowth. Talk about some of the partners you have and kind of what goes into this and into the trail building.
I'm sorry about my dog in the background. He sees somebody else outside. Do we need to clip part of this?
That's fine.
No, it's fine. We're dog friendly.
Okay. Well, Harry sees a neighbor's dog out the side door. So, but yeah, so this project it's a professionally built project. And so the crew that worked on this project was actually based out of Vermont. We've had a long-standing relationship with this build crew. Once you see the project for yourself, you'll notice that there's quite a bit of stonework on this project, and they are just 1 second. Hey, Harry, come here, buddy. Harry, that's Skylar. She's just out and about. Come on, come here. Just because you live on 20 acres doesn't mean you don't have visiting dogs.
It's quite all right. It's one of the perils of Zoom.
One of the delights of Zoom. You get the
yes,
spontaneous interspecies interaction.
That's
Exactly.
right.
Yeah, you should see this great Pyrenees out on the side porch right now. She is a mess. But so the builders came out of Vermont for this project, and they have worked for us over the last 6 years. They've worked with us basically each winter because up north in Vermont, things freeze over, and they come down to Tennessee to essentially winter and build great trails for us. And so the team with I'd Ride and their main builder, Night Eyed, being stonemasons as a background, they have built some trails over there that are incredibly unique and are going to provide a great experience for the riders. You mentioned that we're partnering with the city of Knoxville on this. That's also, we work with a number of different land managers, and the city in this case is going to be the ones recording the easements on these trails. And so very similar to a greenway easement, this is an easement for natural surface trail, and it's from my understanding, this is the first one-off of these that we've done, and it's going to be a language that we continue to use in the future. Nonprofits have held these easements in the past, but our organization thought that it would be better for the city of Knoxville to hold this, just to sort of symbolize the fact that this is a community asset.
And let's talk about AMBC a little bit in general, because I think probably a lot of people at this point have probably heard of you all, but they may not know exactly what you are. And how long have you been active? And at this point, how many miles of trails have you guys actually been involved in building in and around Knoxville?
Yeah, so we've been around for over 15 years now, and organized as a group to build and maintain natural surface trails with obviously a focus on cycling. Although I'll say that out of the 90 miles of trail that we help maintain and manage, over 95% of those are multi-use, right? So the lion's share of the trails that we have helped build and maintain over time are for all user groups. And that has been one of the main reasons we've had good success, is because we aren't building trails just for mountain bikes. And that's been an important conscious decision on our part. And we always try to bring stakeholders to the table to get input on where we should best be spending our mostly volunteer time and labor. So yeah, the club's been around for quite a while. and I've been active with the club for over a dozen years, and served as a president at one point, and now I'm the executive director and one of a couple of staff members. And so we've certainly grown over the last few years with the ability to harness the power of a staff person, essentially. And it's great to be able to wake up each day and have our mission at the forefront of my mind, and maintain all our relationships with city, county, state, nonprofits, and everybody else within the trail world.
Okay, great. I guess one of the great things is you get to, as executive directors, as staff members, you get to make a living doing what you love to do, and what you did as a kid. I mean, I wish, there are times I think about, hey, if I could figure out a way to make a living riding a bike, I would too. And but you've done it, so that's great. We'll talk about a little bit. I was interested in how the urban wilderness and the trail network that you guys have put into, how is that being received or is perceived by the greater mountain biking community? Beyond Knoxville and Knox County is, I think, one of the aspirations, at least for people outside looking in, might be is, we want this to be a mecca for mountain biking. And how is that? I don't even know if that's in the forefront of your mind, but how is it as a place for people outside of Knox County to come to?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, we're most interested in Knoxvillians, but I will say that we have developed a network that is that's one of the top destinations in the country for an urban environment. Right? We are not a Moab. We are not in the Rocky Mountains, but we have incredible assets here in Knoxville. We have one of the best public access bike parks at Baker Creek, that there is in the country. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that we are in great standings around the country. We were actually in two different major publications this month, Free Hub Magazine and Mountain Flyer, just for the community that we've built and the trails that we help support. And so, yeah, I mean, we're very proud of the work that we've done and all of the partners that make up the urban wilderness, because we are the boots on the ground in most cases for the urban wilderness, but we are just one of many players within that, and it's led by the city of Knoxville. It's led by Iams Nature Center. The state has involvement within TWRA. We utilize quite a bit of their property at Forks of the River. We've got the county is certainly involved in the urban wilderness as well, County Parks Department. And then what's interesting that some people don't quite grasp a lot of times is that we have relationships with private landowners. Over 25 different landowners already have given access to their property. I'm fortunate enough to live in the county on a parcel that connects to the urban wilderness, and very similar to the drop-in approach. We built the trails before we built the house, and so it's great to have what I term dirt sidewalks, outside. I'm used to living in an urban environment, and I'm 7 miles from downtown, but still get to see quite a few of our neighbors just out and about on the trails here. So.
And do you feel like all of these efforts over the past, couple of decades really have changed the way local residents, people in Knoxville and Knox County, think about our immediate surroundings? Because I feel like for a long time, people kind of thought of, well, if you want to go and do outdoor recreation, you go to the Smokies, you go to Big South Fork, but that people have started to appreciate, we have, hills and trails. And I mean, the county is now building out this Beaver Creek water trail, and kind of thinking of these assets that have been there for a long time, but maybe not been really fully appreciated.
Yeah, and not been fully realized and not been marketed, right? And so, Legacy Parks was at the table early on to really help codify the urban wilderness and to help us market that and and Carol acted as the face of it for the longest time because, we're grimy mountain bikers. We really like to be in the woods, sort of toiling away in the dirt and poison ivy in the case of the summertime. But, it has certainly changed the narrative around outdoor recreation. You cannot deny the fact that the trails have changed. South Knoxville, just come down Sevier Avenue. It is very evident that outdoor recreation is on the minds of most folks in the area. And so, I think that, our work with Visit Knoxville and the Sports Commission, right? I mean, the narrative with them, as well as folks, who are talking with businesses. It used to be, we're the gateway to the Smokies. Well, you know what? We've got so much to offer right here in town that we can drop that. The Smokies, yes, they're at our back door, but we have amazing foothills and front country trails right here that allow people to get out after work. Heck, during the middle of the day, you can take a run from the YMCA downtown across the Henley Street Bridge, do a 6-mile trail run at Fort Dickerson, and be back in at your desk within an hour if you're quick enough, I suppose. But it has certainly changed the language in how we talk about outdoor rec, for sure, by having these assets.
Yeah, sure has. What is next for the urban wilderness and for the bike club? I mean, as far as both in terms of projects that might be on the horizon and events that might be coming up.
Yeah, so we are always looking for additional ways to gain access to build additional trails. This year the drop-in literally dropped into our lap, if you will, because it was not on our radar per se, but it was an opportunity that we couldn't turn down, essentially, right? And so we will be looking for public-private partnerships all across all of the networks to see, where best we can fit in with our labor model and with our knowledge of how to connect people to the woods, right? How to get people outside. And so, we've got a couple different projects that are coming on board this year. They're not urban wilderness related. They're going to be tied to county park systems. And so we're going to be working at Concord Park this year, installing a couple new trails there. We're going to be working on a few new trails at IC King as well, another county park. And as far as city parks are concerned, we'll be doing some retrofits over at Sharps Ridge, which has seen a lot of trail development over the last 6 years. We'll actually be doing a modification to an existing trail over there, the Lincoln Trail, to make it a bit more accessible for adaptive mountain bikes. And so it's a need that's underserved, and so we are modifying an existing trail bed to better suit the needs of an active program for adaptive cyclists that's run by Catalyst Sports, another nonprofit here in town that serves adaptive athletes that climb, paddle, and mountain bike. Those are their main service areas. So.
And I'm glad you mentioned Sharps Ridge, just because on a personal note, I live in Oakwood Lincoln Park, about a 15-minute walk from the trailheads there. And I will say it's a tremendous neighborhood amenity here for me to be able to walk over there and do, it's like a nice 3-mile hiking or jogging loop there and come right back to my house. It's a great thing, right in the middle of a city neighborhood, basically.
Absolutely. And yet again, making that connection to the Smokies, when you're up at the top of Sharps, you have a great view of the Smokies. We are just really fortunate to have the green space that we have and to have the permission from the Parks Department and from the administration to do the work and to fulfill our mission. And you'll notice, Jesse, we've got 20 volunteers out at Sharps today, and they were out there yesterday. So you'll notice some clearing. It should be a little bit easier to get around over there after the week. So,
well, all right. Thanks again for joining us and catching us up on what you all are working on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I will make a plug real quick for our for this drop-in project, right? We are raising funds for this project. So we've essentially tasked our fundraising committee with raising $45,000 in 45 days, and we're getting super close on that. And so anybody who wants to essentially invest some dollars in conserving a hillside in South Knoxville and also gaining access, more trails in South Knoxville, should visit our website at ambcknox.org. So.
Well, great. Thanks a lot, Matthew. Appreciate you dropping in to visit with us.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott and Jesse. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks again to Matthew Kellogg for joining us. And we are now coming to the reader Q&A part of the podcast. Every week, we invite people on our subscriber-only Facebook group. One of the many benefits of being a Compass subscriber, get access to our subscriber-only Facebook group. And we ask people if there's anything that they want to hear us talk about on the podcast. We got a lot of suggestions this week. Many of them were interesting, but they were things that are actually stories we're working on for the future, or things that are going to require some time to dig into and so forth. But we did get one question that we can answer today. I don't know if we can answer it definitively, but we were just talking about the urban wilderness. We had a question about some urban wildlife, and a reader asked us, did I just see an armadillo on Sutherland Avenue, or was it the mushrooms? Now, we can't speak to the mushroom side of this question because we don't know which mushrooms he had, how strong they were, so we don't have any opinion on that. We also can't say for sure if he saw an armadillo on Sutherland Avenue. However, we can tell you that it is possible. It is possible that armadillos are native. First of all, so it's 4th of July weekend. People talk about being proud to be an American. Armadillos are as American as they get if we talk about the Americas plural. Right. They are South American native species. I don't think I have to describe armadillos for people. I think most people have some general sense of what an armadillo is, sort of a little armored. Interesting thing that I learned actually in reading about this, the Aztec word for armadillo translated as turtle rabbit. So that kind of, if for some reason you've never seen an armadillo, just think turtle rabbit. That gets you part of the way there.
I would think of turtle possum, but
turtle possum. Maybe they don't have maybe the Aztecs didn't know. I don't know. Anyway, that was apparently the Aztec word was turtle rabbit. Armadillo, as you might guess, is a Spanish word, probably pronounced armadillo more properly, which means little armored one. Again, they do have these kind of leathery, collapsible shells that protect them from predators, and they are native to South America. They spread long ago into Mexico and also long ago into Texas, and I think Americans mostly think of them as sort of like animals of the Southwest.
Desert animals.
Animals, roadkill on Texas highways. But in fact, they have been reported in Tennessee as far back as the 1990s, and there are occasional armadillo sightings as far north as Virginia. So certainly we have armadillos here, and I read an interview in National Geographic with an armadillo expert talking about the kinds of places that they gravitate toward. And even though we think of them in these very dry, dusty places, she said, actually, armadillos, like lots of animals, like water. They like greenery. It helps conceal them. And they most often, when they do sort of travel and migrate, they move along water corridors. And if we think about Sutherland Avenue, a lot of Sutherland Avenue actually runs parallel to Third Creek. There's the Third Creek Greenway that goes right through there. And so it is certainly possible that our reader saw an armadillo on Sutherland Avenue, was maybe going along the creek and popped out to get a soda or something at a convenience store and then go back. And armadillos are probably going to continue to spread because they don't have any natural predators apart from now the automobile is essentially their only real predator. Because they're very hard to eat. And so they're just kind of spreading slowly, but in a determined way. Some speculation that climate change may have something to do with this as it continues to get warmer, that they'll kind of continue making their way farther north.
Yeah, it's funny. I have not seen an Armadillo. But Knoxville, it's a city. It's a city of nearly 200,000 people. All the urban issues, urban problems, urban buildup. But we've got a lot of wildlife here too. I lived at the base of Sharps Ridge for several years. Had foxes.
Oh, sure.
And occasionally there will be a bear sighting somewhere. Coyotes.
Possums and raccoons.
Well,
you kind of can't.
They're ubiquitous, but
you can't avoid.
But it's there is a lot of wildlife in that are inside the city limits of Knoxville that you might not see, but they're there. So wouldn't be surprised if they're.
We're just going to go ahead and say yes, it was an armadillo you saw.
We still don't know about the mushrooms. That's
right.
That's not our call.
All right, so looking ahead to this coming week, this is actually going to be sort of a quiet week on the civic front. It's going to be a noisy week, as we were talking about earlier on the fireworks front. So what's coming up for the 4th of July?
Well, there's going to be the festival on the 4th, which is the city's usual event on Monday. We're going to have fireworks and the symphony and the whole 9 yards down there. It's a family-friendly event. And so that'll be something that many people in the city will want to go to. I think Farragut is having a parade, so folks can venture out to Farragut or stay there if they're in Farragut and go there. Outside of that, everything's going to be closed. All the government offices and things like that, and so that'll be a typical holiday, and lots of people will be out. Lots of people will be shooting off their own fireworks, and it's going to be one thing that is probably going to happen. Is there? My understanding is there's some plans for some protests about the Dobbs decision, but for the most part, I think it will probably, for most people, it will probably be a typical 4th of July shindig.
Mm-hmm. So I was thinking about the 4th of July, and I've had some interesting experiences around that holiday, and one in particular has always stuck with me. When I was in 4th grade, so I guess I was 9 years old maybe, my parents, for assorted reasons, decided to move the whole family to England for a year, and so I actually went to school in England for most of my 4th grade year. And the British school calendar is very different than the U.S. school calendar. They have more breaks, but they're shorter. So they don't have the long summer break. They have, sort of 3 weeks here, 3 weeks there. Mm-hmm. And so one day I was in class and I looked up at the chalkboard and saw the date. And I realized it was the 4th of July, mm-hmm. which felt strange to me because, of course, I'd never been in school on the 4th of July before. Right. We were always off. But it wasn't just the fact that I was in school. It was that usually the 4th of July, meant something. It was like, we're going to go to a parade. We're going to see fireworks. There was all this. And of course, there was none of that. And so I looked at the chalkboard and I said out loud, oh, wow, it's the 4th of July. And the kid sitting next to me, a British kid named Simon, I still remember who it was, kind of looked at me and he said, so? And I said, well, the 4th of July, it's when we declared independence from you. It's when we said, you need to leave. And he looked at me and he said, oh, stop bragging. And he went back to work. And so that was my 4th of July in England.
Oh, well, that's great.
Do you have any 4th of July memories to share,
Well,
Scott?
Mine wasn't quite that cute. I actually almost lost my freedom on the 4th of July.
Wow.
Through my own fault. I grew up in Kingston, just down the road, just down Kingston Pike. And on the 4th of July, back in those days, we had boat races, the speedboats on the lake down there, and a big 4th of July fireworks and fair, and it was a big deal. About 10,000 people or so would show up, and it was a lot of fun. So this was the summer after I had graduated from high school. I was already in college and came back and for the 4th of July weekend because it was going to be a big fun thing, and hooked back up with a bunch of my friends. And after the fireworks were over, I had a couple of friends who were spending their last summer before going to college as lifeguards at the city pool. Well, since they were lifeguards at the city pool and they had keys to the city pool, one thing led to another, and a group of us went to the city pool about 11 o'clock at night, and we brought in some beverages we weren't supposed to have because we were the age we were.
Kool-Aid.
And yes, it was Kool-Aid. And proceeded to start swimming in the pool and just having fun. I mean, there was really nothing too outrageous except for the fact that we were trespassing on closed government property at 11 o'clock at night. And of course, the fine folks at the Kingston City Police Department saw us, heard us, came down and checked us out. And instead of hauling us to jail, which probably would have, being that stupid, we probably should have gone. All they did was they dumped out our Kool-Aid and sent us on our way and back home. But that's the only thing out of the ordinary that ever happened to me.
Close call. Your rights almost got alienated.
They were good. And if, boy, let me tell you, if that had actually happened, you talk about alienated, there would have been a lot of alienation from my parents toward me, because even though I was technically 18 years old and technically an adult, I was still living at home when I came home from college. So that would have been an interesting time.
Well, I'm glad you made it through without a permanent stain on your record.
Well, there might be other stains, but not that one.
All right, well, so coming up this next week, there are basically no public meetings. I think normally this would be a week where they would have school board meetings. Those are going to be the following week because it is the 4th of July week. Lots of people are going to be out of town. We will have a lot of election coverage because we do have the August 4th county general and state primary coming up, and we are methodically going through the contested races. And so for Compass subscribers, you can read about candidates for school board and for several other offices that are on that ballot. And we will join you here next week. Thanks, as always, to our producer, Lord Seth Barber. Our theme music is by William Wright. And Scott, have a good 4th of July.
You too, Jesse.
Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. Your hosts today are Scott Barker and Jesse Mayshark, the founders of CompassKnox.com. You can find their daily in-depth coverage and subscribe at CompassKnox.com. The Compass Point podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Almost an Agreement. Almost an Agreement is a layman's attempt to get a handle on the workings in government and politics that we deal with every day. Check them out at almostanagreement.com or subscribe for free on your favorite podcast provider. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.